And while I'm busy meandering and turning, let's head on over to James, who's also bumbling about the bush this morning.
Well, I'm doing a bit of bumbling. I believe this week is a National Tree Week in the United Kingdom. How do we know that? I couldn't begin to tell you. Here is a tree, and I don't know what it is. I believe it might be the first time I've seen this tree. Have you got a picture of the tree here, Sebastian? Let's have a look. It looks like it might be a large comifera. One of the corkwoods. I think it is. I think this is a comifera tree. I don't know which one. Let me pick a leaf for you, and those of you who are interested in this sort of thing can try and find out. I will do the same. It's a compound leaf. There we go. With a much larger terminal leaflet than the side leaflets. See that? Just there's a bird behind us. Oh, it's a barbet. And the reason I think it's a comifera is it's just got that kind of look about the bark and the kind of spikiness of the branches. No thorns, but it does have spines. The difference, of course, being that a spine is a modified branch as opposed to just a spiky thing. You can see it's sort of spiny here. You see that? That's a spine there. So I think this is a comifera species, but I'm not sure which one. And I've forgotten what is the fire corkwood called? Comifera? Don't know. Had a friend once, mentor, who said that if he ever had a daughter he was going to call her Comifera. I thought it was quite a nice name, actually. He's remained childless, however, by his own choice. He did get married, but that didn't last long. That's another story that I possibly shouldn't be telling the world. Okay, let's carry on. Oh, consulting detective, you say, are there any living leadwoods in the area? Many, consulting detective. I will find you a living leadwood. We are in the area where Herbert was... Oh, we were in the area that we were looking for Tundi in yesterday. She was around here, Herbert said. They found the drag mark. Noel had a quick look around, but they haven't found anything. And 2 people have driven in here to have a look today. So that hasn't been particularly successful, but maybe we'll be lucky and she'll just cross the road in front of us with a cub in her mouth. Wouldn't that be nice? I'd quite like it if she did that. Alright, I'll find you a leadwood right now, consulting detective. We'll just go down into the drainage system and there will be almost certainly be a living one. And while we do that, I believe that braving the winds that are rushing across the roaring waters of Chitwa is Noel.
I'm traveling across the roaring waters of Chitwa in this blustery wind, and we oh my goodness, we have a pied crow that's being mobbed, but then pied crow was actually mobbing a juvenile gymnogene, an African harrier hawk. It was absolutely fantastic, but unfortunately all unfolded so quickly that we couldn't get it to you in time. So sad. I'm just going to park like this and we'll have a little look-see at our hippos who have stuck their heads out, and maybe, just maybe, our juvenile gymnogene will come back. But in the meantime, everybody loves a hippo. Getting a little bit of yawning action there. You can see one of the baby's heads poking above the water. There was a little green-backed heron that flew by. You can hear Hear all the wonderful sounds from the red-billed buffalo weavers in the background. This wind and this cold weather sure is giving us a bit of the runaround. Kat in Tampa, you're curious about why did hippos evolve to live in the water when they don't feed on anything in there? So when you are in your niche, in your habitat, okay, well, habitat and niche are two different things, but when you're filling your niche within your habitat, you serve certain functions and certain roles. So just because hippos don't eat anything in the water doesn't mean that they don't serve an important role inside of the water that they stay in. So when they go to the toilet inside of that water, it adds nutrients in. When they move and walk around, it pulls up silt and pulls up it takes up the bottom of the water body there and mixes it around, which is extremely important. In places like the Okavango Delta, that mixing and the channels they make aid in filtering through nutrients. It's extremely important. And because they eat grass and are bulk grazers, you can't have a bulk grazer of this size as well as bulk grazers of, say, a rhino size and not give what's known as resource partitioning. So the rhinos are going to feed throughout the day and the night, but they are going to rest a little bit during the night, and the hippos are going to come out and feed during the night and then rest during the day. So you're actually giving each species a chance to obtain the same resource without interfering too much. So while we ponder that, let's head on over to Brent in the Mara and see what he has to show us.
Well, I said we're going to come back to see if we could find that juvenile palm nut vulture. And we have, and a much better view this time. It's on the ground, very close to where we saw it yesterday. So it's busy changing between its juvenile colouring and its adult colouring. So it's starting to get more white, but there's still quite a lot of brown. There he goes. Now, there's an old buffalo carcass here that it's been feeding off. Now, I think this vulture probably got blown by a big storm from Lake Victoria, from the other side, and was pushed into this area. Isn't that incredible? Now, palm nut vultures, even though they do have a more varied diet than the other vulture species, still will eat very rotten carrion. And it's a little bit more nervous than the other vultures. Of course, it isn't as dominant around not as dominant around the kill sites as the other bigger vultures. Now, James Richards wondering about their immune system. Is it similar to the other vultures? Yes, it is. They will eat on very rotten corpses, just like the other vulture species will. And it's just, as I say, it's very unusual to find them in this area. They're generally in sort of more wetter, more tropical areas. You do get them along the Kenyan coast quite often, and I say on the opposite side of Lake Victoria in Uganda, where it's quite a lot wetter. A palm nut vulture in the triangle. Well, he's drying out his wings. And we're going to keep moving down along the edge of the Mara River, seeing what else we can find now that the mist is lifted. So I can't hear who the question's from, but it sounded like, do vultures have natural predators? Not really. They are killed most commonly by lions. Sorry, this impala is looking like it's spotted a predator. Speaking of predators, I just want to see if he starts snorting. What have you spotted, impala? Or are you just using the termite mound to have a scope to see if there's any lady friends about? So we've got Wahlberg. No, I don't see any potential teeth and claws. Oh, that's something you don't see too often in this part of the Mara. But generally, on the other side of the river and up around the escarpment, we see, and also down south near the Tanzanian border, we see eland a lot. But in this particular section of the Mara, we don't actually see eland too often. And looks like a young male. We'll have a closer look now. Is it a young male or is it a lone female? No, it's a young male. Most definitely a young male eland. Maybe that's why he's on his own and wandering around in areas where we don't see eland too often. Looks quite nervous, but the eland are generally quite nervous, giving us the 1,000-yard stare. They are absolutely exquisite antelope, though. Looking a little nervous. You can see the dewlap and the base of the neck. It is still developing and quite young. Oh, look at that beautiful white stripe. Giving us a good look over. Shame, he's looking a bit nervous. We're going to keep moving. Now, I know a few of you are wondering about what happened with the domestic dog that Jamie saw last night. It seemed to run out of the reserve back towards the villages. It just disappeared. The rangers did look for it, but unfortunately they didn't find it again. I'm sure if it does come back into the reserve, the rangers will find it. Now, unfortunately, when dogs come into the reserve, they have to be destroyed. As I say, they pose a major threat when it comes to disease to the wild animal populations, and probably the biggest threat that they carry is rabies. And in this area, also canine distemper, which affects jackals and wild dogs particularly. So, and as I was saying yesterday, one of the first signs of rabies is confusion, and the dogs start wandering further and further away from home and not able to get back to their home, and that's because their brain has started to swell from the rabies virus. And it's a very, 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 very nasty virus, and it's not a very pleasant death for any animal. But on a happier note, James is with one of my favorite trees that I haven't seen since I left South Africa.
Right, everybody, here I have found what looked like an animal on the road. I was convinced that we were in luck and that we had found some kind of, well, mongoose maybe? But it isn't. It isn't a mongoose at all. What it is a bushman's tail, baboon's tail that's been... mad, that's been pulled out of the ground, I suspect by elephants. And we don't often get to look at them in this detail. We do often look at them, but not in this detail. There are the roots, obviously. Adventitious root system, very shallow. They don't go very deep into the ground. But what I really wanted you to look at was these remarkable sort of filaments that it's made of. So if I take one of those off like that, and we look basically at it in cross section, it'd be quite interesting to do this with a microscope. What you can see perhaps is that it's made of tubes. Each of those little filaments is a little tube. Now I've never read this, but I think how it works is as follows. These plants go dormant almost immediately when it gets dry, and then as soon as there's a little bit of water in the surface of the soil, they immediately come to life and they produce little green leaves and little purple flowers. And I think the way they do that is that they aren't very good at holding water, but they're very good at sucking water up. And they suck water up through something called capillary action. And capillary action happens, it's a unique property of, or a combination of the unique properties of water. I don't think it works with the liquids. I think it's only water that it works with, and a very thin tube. So if you put an extremely thin tube into water, it actually gets sucked upwards very slowly into the tube. And I forget exactly the mechanism by which that happens, but you've got a very narrow tube, and I think it's probably got something to do with the unique properties of the hydrogen bonds that occur in water. Something along those lines. Anyway, what you've got here is a whole sort of a tube of tubes, if you like, tiny little capillaries that suck the water up very quickly. As soon as there's any water in the soil, comes up through the roots and gets sucked up into this stem, and that then produces the leaves, the flowers, and then as soon as it gets dry again, it just goes dormant. The water will evaporate out, and there's no way that these roots are ever going to get into the deep subsurface to try and maintain some kind of contact with groundwater. And also the stem is not capable of protecting the plant from desiccation. I think it desiccates very quickly. There's no wood in it. It's just these hundreds and hundreds of tubes. And I think that's how it survives. I've never read anything about that. I've just kind of looked at it and drawn my own conclusions, if you like, from the various bits and pieces of my rather slovenly education thus far. Let me plug myself in. I'm now plugged in. And that's exactly what I was trying to be. Kirsten says, thank you, Michael Caine. We're going to link across to Noel now, find out what she's doing.
We have a battler who is sitting very cold and bedraggled in this tree. It's only moved once for us and then decided it's not worth moving it again. It's just too wet and too cold, and its body, is just too big. Now, the backlighting is very blown out, but you can actually see the orange of the feet really, really well, that orangey red, and of the beak, and it's really popping out. There was even a starling that came and investigated this battler and decided it wasn't even worth mobbing it, and the starling also flew away. So this is about the mood for the morning in the bush here. And so this is what we were chatting about, whether or not this rainy weather is good for these birds of prey. They're really just going to batten down the hatches and wait it out as best as possible. Now, interestingly enough, I've been sitting with birds of prey like this. He's not too far up in the trees, far up enough, but not too far up. If something like a francolin were to wander underneath, he might dive down and try and catch it and eat it. But in general, he's just going to conserve his energy and also make sure that he doesn't injure himself with his very heavy and wet wings. Alright, we are going to leave him to it because normally he would not have allowed us to sit this long with him. He's just kind enough and possibly also just cold enough to give us the chance to view him. So we're going to carry on with our search, hello woodland kingfisher, for some big end hairies. So again, as we talked about earlier, the sticks are over on Cheetah Plains, and then I can hear that possibly something is around the little Gowrie boundary, so we might get lucky there. Fine, you're wondering what is the most preyed upon bird in the Kruger? Interesting question. I honestly couldn't tell you because each bird of prey is going to prey on either a huge amount of species or a very specific type of species. I would guess because there's of guinea fowl and francolins that it would possibly be that, but other than that, I couldn't honestly tell you. I do know that when the red-billed quilias are flocking and in their large numbers, that things like shikra and dark chancroning goshawk and oh yes, a whole litany of birds of prey will go after those flocks of quilias. But you know, to be honest with you, I don't think you could say there is a species that is preyed upon the most. I mean, everything has to work in balance with everything else. Sorry for my sniffles this morning. It is very, 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 very chilly. Brenda, interesting question. You're curious if snakes will be above ground. So, Brenda, yes, with the moisture, with the rain, we will get more snake activity, but we also need warmth with the rain. So, today is cold. I'm not quite sure what exactly the temperature would be at the exact moment, but it is cold. So, I would guess that if it warms up during the day, this afternoon, we might see a little snake tracks, a bit more snake activity. The only type of snake that I've really seen in weather like this where it's chilly and wet is sometimes a rock python, an African rock python, but everything else is going to be sort of hiding and snuggling because they are ectothermic, poikilothermic. They need outside temperatures to warm themselves up. So you'd find that they'll probably be underground where it's a little bit warmer, or inside of termite mounds where it's definitely much warmer, until the ambient temperature outside gets a bit warm, and also that so they can have the sunshine to help warm them up as well. Good questions, everybody. Keep them coming. You know we love them. Well, I especially love them. Especially when I'm driving around and looking for tracks and looking for wildlife. I enjoy chatting with all of you. Also checking in the trees a little bit. Again, for birds of prey that might be roosting in there, but then also possibly for a leopard or two. I know when I get home, I'm going to have the largest cup of hot coffee. I actually might have tea today with a little bit of sniffles. Vildy's saying, yeah. Ooh, Vildy's going to have a Milo. So, for any of you that don't know what Milo is a type of hot chocolate type drink. It's got a very specific, I don't know, it's a Milo taste. I don't know how else to describe it. So that's going to be what Vildy will be drinking. Today would be a really good soup day. Tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. Yum, yum, yum. That's how cold I am. I'm thinking about tomato soup on Game Drive. Alright, let's go over to Jabe, see how cold he is, and maybe he has something to show you in this frigid state.
Well, I'm certainly not going to talk about Milo and soup. Those are two things that I'm not particularly fond of either of them. I am still looking, well, I've passed many, but not while you were with me. A leadwood, a living leadwood. Naturally, of course, when you actually are looking for one, they are nowhere to be seen. That's a little bit like leopards, really. Although leadwoods are easier to track than leopards on account of their, well, the lack of legs, really. Let's just get a little bit lower down here. We've come on to Leadwood Road, funnily enough. There's an interesting one. I didn't realise the remarkable serendipity of that. Hoping that we might pick up Tundi down here, but I'm afraid there has been no sign. And after the rain that we had this morning, any tracks that she may have left somewhere are going to have been obliterated. You may wonder where my right hand has gone. My right hand is underneath my bottom. It is sitting underneath my bottom in an attempt to warm it up because the fingers have gone numb. Such are the sacrifices that we are making in our quest to produce entertaining safari television. Right, I'm 90% sure I'm going to find myself a leadwood in this vicinity now. Yes, there are many. Are there? Is that a leadwood? I think it is. Is it? 1 second. I'm going to ask for Cheetah's question again. That is not a leadwood, I'm afraid. Sorry. Cheetah, go again with your question, please. What is the biggest surprise that I've ever had, basically, in the bush? That I wasn't looking for something and we had a big surprise, and what was it? That's a good question. I'm not sure. One is often surprised out here, of course. You drive along the road and there's a leopard, or you drive along the road, you go for a walk and there's a wild dog, perhaps. I'm trying to think of a particular incident, though. You know, Brent had that incident where he found a ginger cat wandering through Cheetah Plains. That was very surprising indeed. I suppose it would have been that time that I was walking. I explained this situation the other day when we were walking to an old camp at Angama, where I used to work, and we just walked in to have a look, and there were 3 tiny baby cheetahs, at least not cheetahs, 3 tiny baby leopards in the camp. Oh, we're not going to be able to shoot that with the roof on. 3 little leopards lying there in a kind of bed of old leaves. That was extremely surprising. Ah, yes, then of course, as Kirsten mentions, what about the time that Brent came around the corner and gave me a fright? That was very surprising. It was also very embarrassing because I said a bad word. As did Brent, which is quite funny. I promise I'm going to find a leadwood eventually. There will be one. I mean, I can't believe I can't even find you a leadwood today. It really has been dire. There's a dead one coming up, that I know. It's the one from which this road gets its name. An orange-breasted bushshrike calling. The search for the leadwood. Entertainment to the max. As I said to Sebastian, people are going to stop watching Game of Thrones to come on a leadwood search with us. That's how exciting it is. Red-backed shrike calling, adding to the sense of anticipation and jeopardy that there is on the search for a leadwood tree. Ooh, and we stop next to closely related species here, the Combretum herreroense. Not a leadwood, but similar, but not the right thing. We must continue our quest. As the clouds scud overhead, the weather closes in. Will they find the leadwood? But they have found some kudu. There. Do you see them, Sebastian? You look at them while I surreptitiously don't and look for a leadwood instead. Little group of kudu cows with oxpeckers. Fantastic view, at least 2 out of 5. She's chewing little twigs there. She's not only eating the leaves. What is she eating? She is eating Sisyphus. Totally ignoring the... If you see how she's chewing off the twig, that's interesting. I don't think I've seen that before. Especially on that plant which has got vicious thorns, for those of you who don't know. It's one of the very few plants with edible leaves for human beings out here. You can use them in your salad with feta cheese and olives, tomatoes, onions. Avos, definitely. Thank you very much for that, Seb. Yes, must have avos in your salad. But just not capers. Please don't put capers in my salad. Not even in my Sisyphus salad. And as I've said to many of you before, of course, you couldn't rub your hands around that plant the same way that kudu's wrapping her tongue and lips around. I don't understand the mechanism by which it is not so painful that it's impossible for her to eat. They are so tough, but I don't understand why there's no blood either. Can only think that their tongues must be extremely poorly vascularized towards the surface, and that there's quite a hard covering, leathery covering. I'm still searching though, still searching while you look at the kudu for the ultimate tree. For what would a game drive be without it? Surrounded by its close relatives, the russet bush willow. You can see how fluffed out they are in the cold. What is the temperature, Kirsten? Please push the weather button immediately. Apparently it's 18 degrees Celsius, 65 Fahrenheit. It might be if you found a sheltered spot, but in the wind it is nothing like that. Ah, Megan, you say, what is my favourite rainy day activity when stuck indoors? My favourite rainy day activity when stuck indoors, I suppose, would be reading with some apple juice. That would be excellent. Reading with some apple juice. I do like to watch, if there's a really nice film, I like to watch a good film. But I often find that after a day like this, you know, you've had lots of hot days, and then I don't know, if you're on holiday or something and you get inside and you have a sort of warm home day. By the end of the day, I have to get out. I have to do something outside in the cold and misery, just so that I can really appreciate being inside. I don't really get so much cabin fever as I do a need to move my limbs around the place. So I don't like to be trussed up too long inside. It's why the thought of a northern hemisphere winter is so terrifying to me. But I suppose most of you who live in the northern hemisphere are actually very good at dealing with being outside. Now, we have failed so far to find you our leadwood tree. I will continue the dreadful quest that I have set myself. While I do that, let us go back to Chitwa Dam with Noel.
We are heading away from Chitwa Dam. We have checked high and low for possibly a Hasana or a Tamba or a Kachava or whomever might be around. It seems as if no one wants to show themselves. Now, we were chatting with James about what our favorite indoor activity is. I'm not usually a fan of being indoors, but when I have to be indoors, I would agree with James, reading. Reading is one of my favorite things to do. Or possibly watching old movies. Those would be my two things. Other than that, prefer to be outside. Although today, a nice big fuzzy quilt and soup. James, I can't believe you don't like soup. How do you not like soup? It's the best thing, and it warms you up so completely. Oh, we had the best soup the other day. I think it was Amanda. Curse, remind me. I think it was Amanda that made that butternut soup. Oh, it was so good. It was absolutely delicious. It was made with lots of cream and love. It was so good. I'm having daydreams about it. Salivating a little bit. Alright, so our plan now is to go to the Gowrie cut line and check along the boundary there and see if anything has popped across. But I believe that this week is a National Tree Week in the United Kingdom, which is absolutely fantastic. There's a very specific tree that I'm looking for, and here it is, because it's going to give me a little snack. We've got a buffalo thorn, a Wahlberg, a blink, Liam, tell me if I'm saying this correctly, a blinkblar Wahlberg, a shiny leaf, wait a little. Yeah, Liam says it much better than I do. Alright, so you've got zigzagging branches like this, and you've got one thorn that points up and one thorn that points back, and then these beautiful green leaves, which are edible. They taste a little bit like arugula, like spicy spinach. Kudus love them, giraffe love them, impala love them. They call it a buffalo thorn, I've heard, because if a buffalo is being attacked by something like a lion, they'll stick their bum in towards this tree so the lion can't get into the bum end, which they like to take down. I've never seen buffalo doing it with a buffalo thorn. I have seen them doing it with other acacia species. Now, the story that I love so much about this tree has to do with this zigzagging branch. So for all of our viewers out there who really love the Latin, this is a Ziziphus macronata, and Ziziphus is referring to that zigzagging branch. So with this, the story goes that if you pass away and you are not able to, your family's not able to get your body home, what they will do is they will send someone with a branch from this tree to go to your body and collect your soul. And after they've collected the soul, when they travel back home, let's say they're taking the bus, there'll be 2 bus tickets, one for themselves and one for the soul. If they buy 2 Cokes, it'll be one for themselves, one for the soul, etc., etc. And when they get home, they take the branch and they bury it and leave a little bit poking out. And if cows come and eat the leaves, it means your soul has traveled on. So the one thorn is pointing up, right? The one's behind. The one behind is for your life before, and the one pointing up is for the life ahead. I am not the best person to tell this story. I used to work with a tracker who told this story beautifully. It used to take him about a half an hour with many hand gestures, and at the end, the guest would always be in tears. But it's a sweet story, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy the Shangaan culture around certain trees like this particular tree. We'll see if I can find another tree with a few more cultural stories to tell you. We enjoy talking about them from time to time. Okay. My Ziziphus was delicious. I believe James has finally found what he's been looking for. James, is it your marbles? Are we having a good day today?
Marbles? No, I haven't found any marbles. This is a small example of a leadwood tree. You can see here. There we are. Not particularly impressive. Sort of palish, minty green leaves. The odd spike. And not much in the way of fruit. No fruit on this one. And it will, of course, when it gets very big, Seb, what will it look like when it gets big? Not that, but that. We're in a whole forest of them. A whole forest of leadwoods. And they often grow on these lowland areas with very thick clay soils. And there we are. I can't believe we managed to succeed so amazingly. Seb and I, we're geniuses. We managed to find leadwoods. 2 leadwoods in one sighting. I've called it in, everybody, and there are vehicles coming from all over the place to see our sighting. Hello, Mike. You're asking which is harder, leadwood or ironwood. I don't know about ironwood, but I can tell you that leadwood is just over 1,000 kilograms per cubic centimeter. So basically that means that it is slightly denser than water and won't float. Morning. No, thank you. And what was I going to say now? Oh yes, but it's not the densest wood here. The densest or hardest wood here is Combretum apiculatum, which is closely related to leadwood, and that is about 1,250, I think, kilograms per cubic meter. So that is much denser than water. Water's density is 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter. And you can work that out if you want to in imperial. I suppose it would be 2,200 pounds per (10 square feet or so, plus minus. But I don't know about ironwood, I'm afraid. Right, now, while I was bravely searching for leadwoods, Brent Leo Smith was just sort of knocking about in the Mara, and he's managed to find a very boring sighting of lions he wants to tell you about.
Well, there we go. It's a very big foot we found, and attached to said very big foot is a lovely lioness, and who is enjoying the nice morning sun after a very chilly morning. And behind her is one of the musketeers. I'm not sure who it is. It's quite difficult to see while he is a flat cat. Now, we are on the boundary of Mogoro and Paradise Pride territory, so this lioness could be from either, but it is definitely one of the musketeer male lion coalition that is snoozing next to her. That is a very flat cat, both of them. I don't think they've moved a muscle since we've been here. We've been here probably, 10 minutes or so, and they are just snoozing. Now, we came down to this area purposely to look for lions, and we have been lucky enough to find some. Remember, hashtag Safari Live if you have any questions for us about lions or anything in general about the African bush. It would be great to hear from you. We're about a kilometre or so away from the river. Oh, there we go. Head is up. Who is it? It is... I'm not sure who it is. Maybe one of you out there can tell me which one of the musketeers is this male lion. Hashtag Safari Live if you know which musketeer this is. He's looking very comfy at the moment. Sorry, Kirsty, I can't hear a word you are saying. It's very, very garbled. I'm very, very, very sorry, everyone. Our comms between, well, it is quite incredible that we're speaking over radio from Djuma to the Mara, but at the moment, unfortunately, it's breaking up very badly. I can't actually hear what Kirsten's saying at all. Oh, I think I heard Link, so let's go across to James with something in the sky.
Well, it's not quite in the sky yet. It is a bird that could be in the sky on account of the fact that it can fly. Yes. This is a chocolate Wahlberg's eagle. And Seb and I both agree that it is not a particularly intelligent version of the chocolate Wahlberg's eagle. It is standing in quite possibly the most exposed place it could. You can see it keeps wafting from side to side, meaning that it's not actually very easy for it to stand where it is. It feels like it's going to fall off. Why would you stand there? Especially after you've made a nice nest you could be sitting in with your partner, warming each other, looking after the eggies. Instead, no, you stand. Maybe they've had a domestic dispute, and he said, I'll show you, I'll go and stand outside in the cold, you'll see, I don't care. And now he's regretting his decision deeply, and thinking to himself, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. Maybe I should go back and say sorry. But he knows that if he goes back now, she'll say, why are you back? Go back outside where you said you were going to be. And don't come back until you've brought me some delicious lizard to feed upon. You see? He's looking at us. He knows that we understand his plight. It's your own fault, my friend. You're never going to win the argument. You should realize that by now. I must say, it does astound me the number of married friends or friends I have in long-term relationships who continue to find themselves precisely where that Wahlberg's eagle is, both literally and figuratively. You would think that the experience of being married for any number of years would help you avoid that situation. But no, my father, as he closes in on his 48th wedding anniversary, finds himself in much the same position quite often. Get married, they say. It'll be fun, they say. Let's carry on. Before I offend somebody and they turn off. Mrs. is up there. Whoops, the daisies. She's up in the nest. I can just see the tip of her head. I don't think we'll be able to get it on camera. Yeah, the roof's in the way, and even without the roof, I can just see her little white head. No. Hey, I hate the question because I never know the answer to it, and we get asked it quite frequently, and I keep forgetting to go and actually do some proper research on it. You say how many birds native to this area are migratory and basically how many are resident. I imagine that of the, I'm going to say a total species list of round about 350, that's total birds ever seen here at Djuma. I would have said about 50% of them are migratory, maybe just slightly less, say 40% of them are migratory. I will try to make my small brain remember to go and look that up when we get home, but I would have said about that. Let's go down here. I haven't been down here for a while. It's now starting to rain again. Alrighty, losing signal, let's go to Noel.
Hello? So I have an update for you. It's not something that I can show you, which is what I'm going to tell you about. So I personally haven't seen Shadow for over a week since it's the first night that Seb got home. She popped up just after we wrapped the show, about 5 minutes after. And then I've been looking for that entire time, and I've not been finding any tracks. Well, it seems as if she's been on Little Gowrie, and she was found just a little while ago with a kill on Little Gowrie, so she should be over there for another few days, unfortunately, but then hopefully when she's done that side, back to us. So I know you all like to know what is happening with our cats on the property, and that's the closest update that I have. So for anyone that's just joining us, the Nkuhumas are on Biffleshoek, the Styx Pride is over on Cheetah Plains, Shadow is on a kill in Little Gowrie. I don't know about Shadow's youngster. Again, I haven't picked up any tracks. My nemesis leopard Tingana, the last tracks we had from him were heading sort of north and east, so who knows. And about 5-6 days ago, we had tracks from Vula male leopard coming in off of Biffleshoek and then heading west. And then I believe it was Tristan 2 nights ago who had Tumba over on Chitwa, and Hassana was there the day before with his kill. So they are around, but just not popping up. And then yesterday afternoon, Herbie had those wonderful tracks for Tundi. We unfortunately didn't get any visual. So we know roundabouts where everybody is. But they're playing hide and seek today if they are somewhere on Djuma. We had one going south a couple of days ago over Little Gowrie cut line. A question that just came through is, where are the elephants? I would also... Dr. Ross is asking where are the elephants. I have no idea. Agvietni? Who knows? Angas? Yeah. I would also like to know where the elephants are. Jim and I had elephants a couple days ago that meandered into a block, and then yesterday afternoon there were some elephants that were seen near Chelapam, but I know Ralph tried to go and relocate and they didn't pop up. So with all of this rain, which means lots of water everywhere, the herds have spread out, and unfortunately their spreading out means they are not here right at the moment. What else? Oh, the only other update that I had was again on Little Gowrie, one buffalo bull. So that's what I have for everybody today. Ooh, and it's starting to rain again. Little by little by little. Please excuse my sniffles once again. Oh, and I'm sorry, I believe it was Debbie that asked earlier to see some frogs. Debbie, I keep checking mud pans and trying to get you visual of frogs, but unfortunately they don't want to pop out. I briefly heard a banded rubber frog, which is a really cool frog. It's black with red markings. You sometimes get a yellow morph to it, and it's a toxic frog. So you get venom that has to be injected into you, like from a snake. A snake has venom, and then that's how the toxin works. Or you get toxins that are poisonous. So poison and venom are two different things that are poisonous, and the poison has to be ingested. So this banded rubber frog, you would have to lick it, and then the poison would be ingested, and then you would get sick from that. But he's got those black and red colorations like we talked about, which is an aposematic coloration, a warning coloration, basically saying, careful, don't eat me because I'm poisonous. And he's got a very long call. I've been hoping to have him call again so that I can tell you, or rather have you hear it, and then we can talk about it. But unfortunately, I just heard the one very briefly. Feels as if this sort of storm that we're having has circled past us and is now starting to come back. Or it's just a larger a larger weather front that's pulling through, and we had a bit of calm in the middle of the storm, because it's definitely picking up, that's for sure. But again, as much as I'm talking about the cold and the wet, it is very, very, very good for the bush to have all this moisture. So I guess beggars shouldn't be choosers. Rain is important here. As if we didn't have any rain, then we would be harping on about that. Again, National Tree Week in the UK. We chatted about the silver cluster leaf a couple of days ago, or maybe it was a week ago. I'm very bad with time. But one of the reasons why I feel like stopping here is I just wanted to show you these little galls that are popping up. So you can see this one, this side. And then you can also see, I actually think, sorry VM, can you get this one, or is the pole in the way? This will be a good one. You can actually see, so these are little gall wasps that put their eggs in there, and then the tree sort of swells around it, and then when they hatch they come out. But you can see, hopefully, this little exit point from where they came out. Now, the silver cluster leaf, when they're very large, this is not a very large cluster leaf, it's a small one. When they're very, very large, they say you mustn't cut them down, because if you cut them down, it will bring hail onto your crops. For me, my favorite thing to do with the silver cluster leaf, I'm not going to eat it now because it's very, very dry and very bitter, but if you have toothache or actually tummy ache, and it works best for tummy ache, you chew it and you swallow the juices, and by swallowing those juices your tummy ache goes away. And when you're chewing it, if you have toothache, it makes your jaws numb. It is not the tastiest tree. It's not tasty like our buffalo thorn that we did earlier, but it does get the job done, and I have chewed it often and gotten rid of my tummy ache on every occasion. TA, you're curious about medicinal plants and how many we get here. I could not honestly tell you how many medicinal plants we get here, but many of the plants that we do have medicinal properties. I just talked about the tummy ache and the toothache with the silver cluster leaf. With a tambueti tree, if I can find one, I'll show it to you. You can make a drink out of the bark and use that to treat ulcers. I'm trying to think now. Oh, we've got a kudu that's coming across the road. There we go. Hello, kudus. Yes, I think almost every tree that we get has some sort of use for the body, if not for, say, making furniture and things out of it. And I'm just racking my brain at the moment for some reason. Excuse me. For some reason, I'm having trouble remembering some of my favorite medicinal uses, but I'm sure they will come back to me if I just think on it a little bit. It's probably this cold weather has frozen my brain, locked away my file 13. There's a little tiny bush that we get called a muti bush. So muti here is medicine. It's also a term for magic, but medicine. And that one can be used like an aspirin. If you crush it up and you put water with it, you drink it, it's like an aspirin. And then, again, a tracker story. I had a tracker who was driving with a friend of mine and found this muti bush, and very descriptively described how if you take it and you put it up your bum, it works sort of like an enema and purges your insides out. But now he chose to do this during sort of sundowner stop, and he was a very gestural speaker. It was amusing, I'm not gonna lie, it was very amusing. Oh, I miss working with him. It's absolutely fantastic. Oh. Alright, so when we get down to the bottom of this road, I'm gonna change directions because we are currently driving into the storm. I don't know if you all can see that sort of a cloud cover starting to come down very, very, very low ahead of me. And also while I'm driving into the rain, it means that poor Vildy has to keep wiping the screen so that you can actually see what's going on with us. So while I'm busy changing directions, let's head up to the Masai Mara where Brent has sunshine and some flat cats.
Well, welcome back. We're still with the very flat kitty cats, who are having a lovely snooze in this beautiful morning light. And it is a particularly beautiful morning. I think it must have been quite cold for a lot of the morning when that mist was here. And now that the mist is gone, they're just really taking it easy and enjoying the sunshine. As it gets warmer, I think they probably will get up and move towards the croton thickets that are not too far from here. So unfortunately, I just couldn't hear who asked the question, but I heard what the question was. So apologies to you, but TA, I think, was the person who wants to know how long does it take a lion to achieve its mane? Well, it all depends. Some lions don't ever grow a particularly big mane, but on average, they will reach a full mane by about 5 years old. But you can see the development of the mane from even when they're about 6-7 months old. But to reach a full mane, about 5 years old. And as I said, some lions never really get a full mane, but that's just unlucky for them. Now, there's a very, very strong possibility that these lions are mating at the moment, and they're just taking a bit of a break between the mating, and you can see all the females on her back. I'm just going to move from Manu a little bit. Look at that. That is a comfy lioness. She looks very, very comfortable. That is lovely. Absolutely stunning. Now, as I said, they could be mating. They're looking quite hungry, so that means they probably are mating. Oh, again, sorry about the comms, guys. Someone's asking, do lions, I think, ever go into a deep sleep when they're napping? They can do, but again, it doesn't pay to be too fast asleep in these parts because you never know what might be around.
Right, I'm sorry about that crash cut away from Brentley Smith. We did find some impala here, but unfortunately I was then being silly on the radio. They took fright and departed. There we are. It has started raining again, which is very unpleasant. Barbara, good question from you. You say, how cold does it have to get before it will start affecting the newborn impalas? I think quite a lot colder than it is now. It's not actually that cold. It's about 18 degrees or so, 65 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe a little bit colder than that in some parts. It's the wind, though, that's the problem, Barbara. So if they get very wet and the wind blows for long enough, I think you'll find that they probably could get cold enough for it to have an effect on them, and I suppose the very vulnerable might die. But I think you'll find, by and large, that, for example, we just passed a male impala, not these chaps, but another one, that was standing chewing his cud, but he'd got himself in behind a thicket that protected him from the wind, and so once he'd done that, it's not going to be very warm, but he won't be cold enough for it to, hurt him or harm him. I think it would have to get to probably below, I'm going to say, 10 degrees Celsius or so. So below, what is that? That's about 45. So below around about 45, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. But otherwise, I think you'll find that the young impala will cope with this. It's been like this in this part of the world for millennia. This is how they've evolved, the impala. Just turning down the game drive radio. It's interesting, I'm getting updates from Cheetah Plains, and the Pride of Lions, the Styx Pride, I think, with 4 cubs now. Oh. It's quite interesting. I'll have to find out exactly what's going on there. Seb's just going to wipe the lens so that it doesn't look like the lens is crying. Nobody wants tears on a day like today, I don't think. This is the route that Noel took very early on. I just want to announce that apparently they are yet again having trouble in the Mara with the internet. Nothing to do with us, I'm afraid. Well, I'm not afraid, I'm very pleased to tell you. Everything from our side is tickety-boo, as it were. But it means that we may well close the drive at 8 o'clock. So when we shut down here at Djuma. I'm just warning you. I don't want you to be shocked and surprised. Not one track of a cat have I seen today. The cats, of course, will be doing much as I suggested we should be doing. They'll be lying on their beds with a good book, possibly next to some kind of heating device, fire perhaps. You can imagine Tundi and her 2 youngsters in a cave with a little fire to sit next to. She reading them a story. Beatrix Potter perhaps. The Wind in the Willows. Paddington Bear. or not. I feel like I've headed off on a number of extremely random tangents today, and if we have had people who've just tuned in, they will be sorely surprised at what they've seen, possibly confused, and possibly even, well, I hope they'll come back when the weather's a bit better. At least Brent's had some nice animals, so at least they would have seen that. Now, yes, there are. Will you say, are there any edible mushrooms going about Djuma? Well, Ralph and I have had this discussion, and he said yesterday he had a wonderful monkey sighting of monkeys eating termites. He was talking about how they taste like peanut butter, which of course they do. But he was saying how monkey stomachs very similar to ours, and so if you see a monkey eating something, you can be pretty sure that you can eat it. Now, we watched them eating mushrooms the other day, and it's a common mushroom around here. I don't know what it's called. If I find one, I'll show you. But I got to tell you, I still wouldn't put it in my mouth. I'd be extremely reticent to stick it in my mouth, even though the monkeys had done it. But in theory, as Ralph pointed out yesterday and a few times, he said, you know, if the monkey can eat it, so can we. So I'm going to say, yes, there are edible mushrooms around here. I'm just not convinced that I would be the first one to try a mushroom. I think I may well wait for someone braver, like Ralph, for example, to try it first. So, if I can find a mushroom here, then I will certainly show it to you. But no, I'm not going to put it in my beak unless somebody shows me. Oh, look at this. Hang on a second. Can we have another few seconds, Kirsten? Is that possible? Look what we have over here. I've parked horribly, haven't I, Seb? Is that right? Isn't that sweet? Look at our little migration, having a lie down. They've lain down in the road, possibly because, of course, they don't have wet grass on them there. But there's not much shelter there. These animals don't feel cold like we do, you know. They could be much closer together and be warmer. Buffalo often lie down very close together, almost on top of each other. I don't know, I'm reminded, of course, at this time, I don't know why, of that planet Earth I think it was the very first episode they did with the penguins, the emperor penguins, trying to stay in the middle of the huddle during the Antarctic winter. And buffalo sometimes do that sort of thing, but these wildebeest don't seem particularly cold. They'll get up and go eating at some stage during the day. And I suppose if you've never experienced the comforts and warmth of a hearth fire, or just pancakes for breakfast, for example, you know, you just kind of take this in your stride and you don't complain about it. He's fast asleep, isn't he? He thinks he's a dog. He's figured out exactly how to deal with this cold. Wrapped himself up in a little ball. Reduced the surface area of his body exposed to the wind, and now he's sleeping. The rest of them you can see chewing their cud. So maybe they have been grazing already. They like to eat in bed, the wildebeest, you see that? Seb? Yeah. Exactly. Breakfast in bed. Even if it is the second time they've eaten one. It is sweet, isn't it? Everyone is saying how sweet it is. That's exactly how I feel about it. A very sweet little sighting of wildebeests, the blue version. Okay, we're going to continue along here, not far from home. Let's go back to Noelle, who I believe has achieved what Seb and I achieved earlier today, and she's found a tree.
I did. I find a tree. They're easier to find. They tend not to wander off. Again, National Tree Week in the United Kingdom. And then we had a wonderful question asking about medicinal trees and plants in our area. So this is a jackalberry. Oh my goodness. Diospyros maspiliformis. Yes, that's the Latin for anyone that's wondering. And then in other parts of sub-Saharan Africa, it's known as an ebony tree. But here in South Africa, we call it a jackalberry. So you can take the leaves and chew them up and make them into sort of a paste. And then if you have a wound on, say, your arm, you put them on there, or burn even. And it works like a plaster and it has antiseptic qualities inside of it. So that is the medicinal use I know for that. The fruits are edible. It also makes a very wonderful tree for any sort of hole nesters, and also a nice leopard tree. Unfortunately, no birds in that tree today, and no leopards in that tree today. And then VM was actually just pointing out to me, we have a sausage tree that's just over to the side there. Oh, I'm sorry, that pole's in the way. Let me just move a little bit forward. So we've got a rain roof on for anybody that is new with us, and unfortunately, that means we have to fasten it with these little poles, and every now and then they get into the shot, so please excuse. So this is the only sausage tree that we have in our area, and VM was saying he's never seen it with fruits, and he can't remember if he's seen it with flowers, and I'm saying, shame, this poor sausage tree is neutered. It's a gelded sausage tree because there's nothing to pollinate it with. Now, normally a sausage tree is an extremely important food source for birds and wildlife. The hippos in the South Luangwa National Park in Zambia eat the fruits. The fruits are very hard when they grow and fall to the ground. They chew them up and open them up, and then baboons are able to get to them, and other antelope species. And the flowers are an important food source as well for wildlife, as well as for bird species, not just for when they fall for, say, impala eating them, but then things like sunbirds will come and use their nectar, any sort of nectar-seeking bird. And then when the fruits start to grow, they're green and very soft, and things like giraffe will eat them, and baboons. So it's sad to me that, I mean, we could talk for an hour about a sausage tree. They're absolutely incredible. So it's sad to me that this tree is a gelded sausage tree. But maybe, just maybe, we'll get lucky and someone else, another one will pop up, and then there can be some cross-pollination that we can go through with them. Oh, there's a wonderful program you can watch on them. I think it's Tree of Life, was shown. It was very, very, very good. I enjoyed it very much. So now, with the rest of today, it looks as if our weather is going to stay somewhat like this. The clouds are lifting slightly, so hopefully this afternoon will be much brighter and more beautiful. I believe it is going to be Ralph and myself out this afternoon, but we'll wait and see, and most likely Brent and Jamie in the Mara. So join us at 3:30 our time for a wonderful show. Thank you so much for myself, James, Brent, everyone on crew and FC, and you must have a wonderful day.